from the fans for the fans. On this episode, we are talking about the... What is it we just watched?
Eifel Grand Prix. This is professional.
What did we watch again? That is right. It was the Eifel Grand Prix. It's been so many different Grand Prix we've watched over the past couple of weeks. It's just sort of blended into one. But that's right. We did watch the Eifel Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. I'm your host, Adam Wheeler, and with me today, we have Luca, our correspondent on esports and resident opinion correspondent.
Yeah, opinions are like... Yeah, no, I've done that before. I'm not going to bother. Carry on.
That's all right. With me also is Deputy Editor James.
Hi, Adam. Good to be back.
Brilliant. And with us also is the stat man, Chris.
Afternoon. Well, I'll start for the stat. It's been called 4 Grand Prix: the Eifel Grand Prix, Luxembourg Grand Prix, German Grand Prix, and European Grand Prix. So you can let them off for this one.
Yeah, no, it's... I think who Ted described, didn't he, the reasons why it was called the Eiffel and not the German. It was to do with, different controlling sponsorships, ADAC control. Is it ADAC control Nürburgring and someone else control Hockenheim? I can't exactly remember.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
All to do with the wrong people owning the wrong rights.
Yeah, it was
Not
weird, but I kind of like it. I like the going trend of geographical naming of circuits. Could we get the Northamptonshire Grand Prix one day at Silverstone or something? But
well, I'm glad they didn't try it for the second Silverstone one because it crosses 3 county borders, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It was Buckinghamshire, Northamptonshire, and Bedfordshire. Isn't that right? Is it? Or Oxfordshire?
All right, I don't want to puncture anyone's time, but we've got a lot to go through.
You're right. You're right, Luca. You're right. So yes, we are talking about the Eifel Grand Prix. But before we do, going into the weekend, we had some big news. We were all stunned by the news that Honda will be withdrawing from Formula One in 2022. I have a quote here that I'm going to read out, which was from the official statement given by Honda. They said, "This difficult decision has been made in light of the quickly deteriorating operating environment facing the global auto industry, brought on by the subprime problem in the United States, the deepening credit crisis, and the sudden contraction of the world economies. Honda must protect its core businesses, activities, and secure the long term as widespread uncertainties in the economies around the globe continue to mount. Under these circumstances, Honda has taken swift and flexible measures to counter this sudden and expansive weakening of the marketplace in all business areas." So, I don't know about all of you, but I was incredibly shocked by this news. It seemed quite sudden at a time when Honda and Red Bull seemed to be on the rise, and that especially the closing of the gap in performances between the Honda PU and the Mercedes PU seemed, it was going in the right direction. Honda and Red Bull were getting a few wins under their belts, and we even saw AlphaTauri really improving this season, with Gasly putting in some mega performances, and in a lot of times outperforming the Ferrari, which has been really, really incredible to see.
Yeah, it's not that difficult.
I guess you're right. It's anyone. I guess HRT could do better at this point.
I wouldn't go that far.
So I just want to get some of your opinions on what are your thoughts on Honda pulling out, and it looks like Luca has something to say. So let's start with Luca.
This is going to probably sound quite depressing, but honestly, we should probably prepare for the inevitability that, heaven forbid, the only power unit left in F1 is Ferrari. I mean, I guess when every power unit is Ferrari, there's no real disadvantage because they're all equally bad. Not kidding. No, my point is that when you look at the way that the automotive industry is going, we're heading for a point now, because I think in like the next few decades, petrol-powered cars are going to be outlawed. Well, not outlawed, but they just won't allow to be sold new ones, and they'll all be going electric. And we're seeing that sort of head itself with Formula E. They have BMW, Mercedes, Nissan, Audi. There's a load. I can't really name them all off the top of my head. Whereas F1 are down to just 3 manufacturers. F1 will have to really dig deep to find a way of appealing more to manufacturers, because the future is not going to be ICE orientated. So in regards to Honda pulling out, I see it as no surprise, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few years the power unit struggle will continue and we might lose Mercedes and Renault.
I guess it's strange, isn't it? Because going into the Concord Agreement, everyone expected that costs in relation to any sort of manufacturing or F1 related business would be much more manageable. And you'd think going into the next few years, Honda may have seemed on board with the project going forward initially. Maybe you're right. Maybe hybrid is too expensive going forward, and it's a shame that we don't have. I remember people on Sky F1 were mentioning we don't have like a sort of a Cosworth or a private engine we can just pick off the shelf and deliver to certain manufacturers, because just the amount of technology and the amount of expertise and costs needed to build and maintain these really complicated engines seem to be out of the norm of any sort of middle to low budget sort of engine corporation. And the fact that Honda pulls out is a bit worrying for any other prospective engine manufacturer coming into the sport. Guys, anyone else have anything to say on this?
Yeah, with the thought of Renault and Mercedes pulling out, there's a trend developing at the moment with Renault's rebranding as Alpine for next year. Mercedes has said that they're going to increase their AMG branding on the team, and try and sort of tie the AMG brand into the F1 team a lot more. And when you see these kind of things happening together, I kind of wonder if, with the electrification targets that Renault and Mercedes have set, if they're trying to sort of distance the parent brand from the gas guzzling internal combustion engine of F1, gear it more towards the smaller brands like AMG and Alpine. And it does make you think, in the future, perhaps if they're going down that route, are the parent companies then going to look at it and think, well, we're not getting the kind of returns we want from being engine suppliers? Is it really relevant to what we're doing and pulling out? And like Luca said, you're then going to have Ferrari, and we don't really have much on the horizon for people coming into F1.
Yeah, Chris, do you have anything to add on any of that?
Well, both of them are in Formula E, and the strange one is Honda are committed to IndyCar, and IndyCar are going electric I think it's 2022. So it's a bit
they're going
peculiar.
hybrid, aren't they? Is it hybrid?
Yeah,
they're going.
Yeah, to a certain extent, and so they've got the experience in it. So I don't know why they're committed to that sport to an extent. But then again, I don't think it's to the degree of the levels that F1 are pushing barriers of MGU, HMG UK. It's just back to the days of KERS, I think, to an extent. But
I think with regards IndyCar versus F1 for Honda, kind of reading between the lines of their statement, it seems to be a little bit, they're not kind of getting the returns they want for the larger parent company for F1. When you think F1's sort of quite, I know it's a global sport, but its audience is very Europe centric, and Europe doesn't make up a lot of Honda's sales. It never really has, whereas their American market is huge. So it kind of makes sense for them to stay in IndyCar and keep doing the domestic things like Super GT and Super Formula with those internal combustion engines, because again, their Asian market is a lot bigger than their Europe market. So yeah, if they're trying to cut costs, kind of makes sense that F1 was the one to go if they're not getting as much from it as they would from an American series or an Asian series.
Question: do we think Honda will have a future in sports such as Formula E going forward? Could we see Honda buying out a private team such as Techeetah and running their own factory team there? And I mean, going by what you said, James, is Europe the market to do that? Is a primarily European series such as Formula E the right way to go with that? Luca, do you have any thoughts? Do you think Honda will probably go into Formula E in the future?
I think most big line corporations, manufacturers are destined to go into Formula E, because, like I said earlier, with the way that most countries are now going to be heading with their future transportation markets, it's inevitable. And I just want to go back earlier. These sort of big manufacturer pullouts such as Holden in the Aussie supercars. And then you've got in DTM, Audi are pulling out. Mercedes have already pulled out. Aston Martin had a half-hearted effort getting into it. The future for manufacturers in championships like this, unless it has a really big immediate market profit, it's never going to happen. And I think the future of most motorsport that doesn't have much manufacturers behind it will be privateer based, and it'll always just be about the independent teams, and there'll be no sort of major factory support in place. So with Honda going to Formula E, it only makes sense. This Formula E is going to be the main championship that a lot of these manufacturers will want to go into to help develop their electric technology for when the ban comes in for petrol powered cars.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Red Bull do going forward in 2022. There's a very small list of options for them in 2022. We can't see Mercedes. I think Toto Wolff said himself that they don't have the capacity to supply Red Bull going in 2022, as they'll have McLaren, they'll have Williams, Racing Point, and themselves all. So capacity at Mercedes just can't deal with supplying another team. Ferrari, why would they go to Ferrari? It's a very uncompetitive engine at the moment. It seems unlikely at this point. Could they? There's a small possibility,
Well, I'd like to add that Renault, by sort of law of the build, have to supply them both engines. He's up for that because Renault seems to be improving. Honda have said that they're going to build one more engine over the closed season for next year. They've already said that. And I feel that AlphaTauri since 2010 have been their own independent team. That was 2009 was the last time Nui had any say on the car. And 2014 was the last time, I think it's 2013, sorry, AlphaTauri, then Toro Rosso, was Ferrari. I feel they're going to go separate ways. And AlphaTauri, being Italian, is going to go Ferrari, and Red Bull going to go Renault.
That's a good shout. That's a really good shout. Although there is obviously the elephant in the room, going back to Renault with their tail between their legs. It'd just be amazing. Just seeing the Drive to Survive episode with the Cyril and Horner conversation behind the scenes. Oh, you know what? That would just make my day seeing that. But they are, I think there is, they are contractually obliged to supply Red Bull with engines if they have no other option, given that they supply the least amount of teams on the grid, I think is the regulation. There is also, I think there's another option for them in which there's discussions in that they buy the intellectual property of the Honda engine and potentially run it through is it the Meguen or the
Mugen?
Mugen. Thanks, Luca, for my shoddy pronunciation. But and run it from that. Who have a base in Milton Keynes somewhere, I think, which might be quite handy.
It'd be like the Jordans going back to the old school, Mugen Honda. Go.
Throwback.
Be like Murray Walker. Happy birthday to him. Speaking about that over the weekend, but hearing him, Damon Hill and all that when the one of Belgium.
Yeah. How old is Murray? Did we catch that?
97.
97.
Hell, Christ.
He done one of the Grand Prix. I caught that over there. I know, going off topic a little bit, when he sort of came out of retirement as such and done 2007 Grand Prix of the Nürburgring, and that was mental. I'm unfortunate to have never watched a race with Murray Walker commentating. Obviously I've watched the historical races, but I've never watched a live race with Murray Walker commentating. It's quite, I feel quite, even though I'm 24, 25, I'm feeling quite young. I don't know, it just feels strange. But no, did any of you hear or watch a race with Murray Walker live? When did he retire?
2001, the US Grand Prix, I think.
So maybe we're just a bit out of reach. I don't know.
I definitely am.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from the Honda news, the only other real big talking points going into the weekend were that Mick Schumacher and Callum Ilott both were scheduled to have free practice session runouts with Alfa Romeo and Haas, respectively. Unfortunately, due to bad weather conditions, being that the fog or poor visibility couldn't allow the medical helicopter to fly safely at that time, meant that no running could be done on Friday, and those two couldn't get a run out, which was really unfortunate for all the fans, especially for Mick Schumacher fans, who were all at the circuit ready and waiting, and they were just sitting there all day drenched and didn't get to see any running. I know it was, I don't know about you, but I was sort of sat there like a lemon on the sofa just waiting for something to happen. I had the laptop in front of me and I just went and did some more. Yeah, just I just did nothing all day. It just felt so weird. But I was really excited to see Mick Schumacher almost get his run out, and Callum Ilott. They've been doing so well in Formula 2, both P1 and P2 in the championship respectively. And it almost, to me, seemed like a precursor to almost a set deal that Mick Schumacher is going to be in that Alfa Romeo next year. The way that Mick was with the team and the way he was, how he was throughout the entire weekend. He was with the Ferrari team on the pit wall, watching how things went. You got this sense that there's this inevitability that he's going to be in F1 next year, but we don't know just yet until we know exactly the contract details with Raikkonen and Giovinazzi. But yeah, anyone have anything to say on Mick Schumacher or Callum Ilott? Luca, what do you go for it?
Mick Schumacher, a lot of people have obviously given him a lot of crap because he's only there because his surname's Schumacher. Well, he's definitely proven this year, I think. I wrote an article during, I think, Schumacher Week talking about Mick and how his career has gone. And we always seen this trend of like, he doesn't do brilliantly in the first year, but then in the second year, when he's in the same championship, he either wins it or comes second when it comes to car racing. He finished second in German and Italian F4 in 2016 after his first year. And then in Euro F3, he didn't win in his first year at all. But then in the second half of 2018, he won so much and won the championship somehow. And I said that I was half expecting him to have been beaten by Robert Schwartzman, the current F3 champion. And Mick really was like very consistent at the beginning part of the year, and he just quietly started just stamping authority, and I was just amazed by it. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all, considering Ferrari do have a stranglehold on one of the Alfa Romeo seats. And as much as I like Giovinazzi, I do think, despite how I think thrown in at the deep end he really has been, a bit like Stoffel van Dorn at McLaren, he's probably not going to be in that seat next year. He'll probably stay on at Ferrari though. But I think if any driver is going to go into that seat instead, it will definitely be Mick Schumacher, and I think he'll do phenomenally. As for Callum Ilott, I think he's definitely going to really lose out because he's in his second F2 year. So he doesn't have really much of a reason to stay in F2 beyond this year if he misses out on an F1 seat. And even if he does, he's then going to be leapfrogged by Robert Schwartzman. I do feel bad because I think Ilott has proved himself over the years to be a phenomenal driver. And I do hope he can find a seat, but I just don't see where he could go realistically, because Ferrari don't have the same authority over one of the Haas seats as they do with Alfa Romeo. So if he ends up missing out, it's going to suck. And yeah, those are my opinions on Mick Schumacher and Callum Ilott. They are phenomenal drivers, and it's gutting that they missed out on some free running, but they're going to get it in Abu Dhabi instead.
Yeah. James, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the Callum Ilott thing. Like there was a comment, I'm sure some people might have seen it, from Günther Steiner ahead of the weekend, saying that Callum Ilott, even though he's running in FP1 with Haas, wasn't on Haas's shortlist for next year, which seemed really surprising. When they said they had a 10-driver shortlist, you kind of assume there was Grosjean and Magnussen, and then Schumacher, Ilott and Schwartzman, Perez and Hulkenberg, maybe a couple others. But the fact that he said Ilott wasn't on the list was really shocking, because he's been so good in F2 this year. He led the championship for so long. He's still in contention for the championship now. And I think Steiner did come out and say, if he performs well in FP1, he could make it onto the list, but it wasn't a given that he was on there. And that, yeah, there's there's just something about Eilert that for some reason he seems to get overlooked quite easily, despite his results and despite his talent. And I think when you're in the Ferrari stable with, Schumacher and Schwartzman, you've obviously got Schumacher is the son of Michael Schumacher, and Robert Schwartzman has been on this kind of meteoric rise and seems to be like Ferrari's golden boy in a way. And I think when you're up against those two with that kind of almost a sort of superstar quality put onto them, it's been hard for Eilert to distinguish himself, despite the fact that he's done so brilliantly in F2 and he's ahead of Schwartzman in the championship considerably. He's well within reach of the championship himself. But yeah, I don't quite know if he is going to make it onto the grid for next year, and that would be a real shame. And like Luca said, I don't know where he would go if he doesn't. If he would stay in F2 for next year. If he does stay in F2, he's going to have an incredibly difficult job being in that title fight again, because you're likely going to have someone like Schwartzman, Christian Lundgaard. These very quick drivers coming through, perhaps Oscar Piastri coming out of F3.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to sort of repeat this performance next year if he has to do it again. And yeah, I really feel for the guy.
Yeah, I agree. And we heard that Ferrari were almost going to guarantee Schumacher a place in F1, given that he would finish top 3 in the standings. So you get this feeling that despite whether Eilert finishes first or second above Schumacher, you still would expect Schumacher to get that Formula One drive over Eilert, regardless, really. So he does seem a bit in between a rock and a hard place at this point. And he's obviously up against the likes of Perez and Hülkenberg, and obviously the two incumbent Haas drivers, Magnussen and Grosjean, who aren't, they're not slouches. It's a really competitive, what's the word I'm looking for? It's really competitive to get into a Haas seat, I guess, for next year. And there's a lot of people who are vying for it. Chris, did you have anything to add on any of that?
When it comes to Alpha, you got to think it was where Kimi started, and move on to Kimi in a moment. So Kimi probably has that tied down just to loyalty, really. And then Schumacher, well, bit of Ferrari wheeler dealing. With Eilert, and when it comes to Giovinazzi, I reckon he'll move on to maybe GT Endurance or something like that. Eilert, well, he's probably just come to the seat at a wrong time. Maybe Formula E. I eventually see Formula E and F1 merging probably eventually. That's how it's going to end up. Maybe 2040 or something like that. It'll be eventually the one big series.
That's a big shout, Chris. Should we put some money on that? Or
yeah, we'll hold you to that.
But,
How old will you be in 2040?
How old will I be in 2040? Well, I'm 29 on the Sunday. There we are. So maybe 40, 45, something like that. But there we are. And then Schwartzman, and he gets the test in Abu Dhabi. But what's the odds on Schumacher and I look maybe getting a drive out beforehand, because there's no F2 action until Bahrain.
Yeah.
Well, no, because you got Portimao, Imola, and Istanbul. Yeah, the teams are really going to want to run at those tracks in particular, considering the fact that they're still fairly new and they don't have much data on them.
But I'm saying with Bahrain, you got two sets of action. Like, are they really going to bother with FP1 and FP2 2 weekends in the track? Are they really going to need to do the testing at Bahrain?
Well, they're two different layouts.
Yeah. I would imagine they'd run again at one of the Bahrain weekends, but it's not much before Abu Dhabi, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then alongside that joins the young driver test. Anyway, but and then say with Eilert, I think he's just come at a wrong time. I think he'll pastures new, maybe somewhere else. Haas, they've had the same teammates for about 4 years now, so they might have to try a new partnership to get somewhere going. If Luca wants to, he can do his Gunther Stein impression.
May I?
Yeah, no, you have to go for it.
Roman Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen, you are doing terribly. I will replace you with Nikita Mazepin and get money from his $7.1 billion father.
Not Not that we know that Mazepin is confirmed for Haas for 2021, but you know.
I hope not, but it's going to happen. He's going to have the super license points.
That's true.
There's his stab. So you say Mazepin and Schwartzman, yeah?
Well, to be fair, Haas is an American team. They need Russian backing to do something about whatever they're doing. It's clear. It's very much like their government.
Whoa!
Hot take by me.
But I mean, quickly just touching on Mazepin, why you just done that. He's actually done not too bad this year. He's had a few feature race wins and a few good qualifying performances. He has put himself in the frame, I guess, for a seat, maybe. Mazepin's always been a bit of a weird one for me. I've always seen him as a talented driver, but just he's always been surrounded by superstars who always seem to take the limelight. And
no, I disagree on that notion.
Oh, okay. No, go for it, Luca.
I think I should let James have this one first. He looks like he wants to say something.
I was just going to say, I think Mazepin is a good driver. I mean, I saw him in, I can't remember if it was F3 or if it was still the last year of GP3. I can't remember when they changed. But when he was up against, Hubert for the championship, and he ran him quite well for that. Last year in F2, he was really off, but there seems to be a thing about the second seat at ART. It seems to be a kind of curse where one driver at ART does really well and the teammate not so much. But yeah, he has been very, very good this year in F2, although there's a caveat in that High Tech, his team, joined the grid largely because his father put a lot of money behind the High Tech F2 operation to have a team built around Nikita. So he's got a very, very lucky situation there. But no, he has put in a lot of good results, and I'd be very surprised if he was on the F1 grid for next year. I don't think he's quite done enough for that, but
his father keeps on trying to buy teams for him.
He's tried to buy so many teams now.
Williams, Force India, Renault, maybe, I'm not sure. Haas,
possibly.
Daddy Stroll we're talking about, sorry.
No,
we're talking about
Mazepin.
You think that whenever a team puts like the for sale sign outside, he's the first person at the door, and they're like, "For goodness sake, Mazepin, stop, go. We know it's you. We don't want it."
It doesn't help that it's a bit like Latifi. Latifi had a very underwhelming career, and then he had one good year in F2 after about 5 seasons. And as soon as he got the super license points, that meant that any for sale seat was up, and his now all of the companies that his dad owns is plastered all over the car. The only thing about Latifi over Mazepin, though, is at least he's a good guy, because Mazepin's a tosser. Like, he's punched Callum Ilott in Euro F3, and then over the weekend, I don't know if you guys know this, he tried to out a current Formula One driver as gay.
Really?
Did not know that.
I did not hear this.
I don't want to say who, but basically this driver was on his Instagram live, and they were trying to I can say who it wasn't. It wasn't Lando Norris, because the driver in question, don't say it on the air if you're looking for it now, but this current driver was like, Lando doesn't want me to reveal his secrets. And Nikita Mazepin said, I know a secret about you. You could say it was a coming out. Can you believe that?
I did not know that. That's quite shocking.
Well, he's another Tictum. He's another Ferrucci. He can go F himself, frankly.
Oh, your favourite. Anyway, moving on.
Well, Mazepin is not endorsed for the Haas seat if Gunter Steiner is watching. Well, let's move on to the race. I think that's a good moment to swiftly move on. So, just to give you a quick recap of the Eifel Grand Prix, we started off with Valtteri Bottas on pole, with Hamilton lined up just alongside him. Hamilton made a better start than Bottas and died for the inside at the first corner, pushing him wide, but Bottas held his ground and recovered the lead on the inside of the second corner. That gave Bottas control of the race, but Hamilton pressured him hard, and in the end, the leader buckled. Bottas handed the advantage back to Hamilton on lap 13, locking a wheel into turn 1 and running wide, allowing Hamilton to close in and pass for the lead around the outside of turn 2. 3 laps later, the race fell further into Hamilton's hands when a virtual safety car allowed him and Verstappen to pit for fresh tyres and retain their positions ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And 2 laps after that, Bottas retired with a suspected failure of the MGU-H, part of the hybrid system. Hamilton went on thus to take his 91st win of his career, matching that of Michael Schumacher's famous illustrious record, and surely taking his place as one of F1's most successful drivers in history. The official top 10 classification was Lewis Hamilton, followed by Max Verstappen. The final podium place was taken by Daniel Ricciardo. Fourth place was, I can see Luca and James are quite happy with that. Fourth place, Sergio Perez, followed by Carlos Sainz. Fifth. Sixth place was taken by Pierre Gasly, followed by Charles Leclerc. And debutant Nico Hulkenberg, Romain Grosjean, and then Antonio Giovinazzi rounded out the top 10.
Was that a slip of the tongue, Adam?
That was I misspoke. Let's see. Returning driver, shall we say. And we had, of course, many retirements. We had Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas, and George Russell, all not finishing the Eifel Grand Prix. So I think we really can only start with Lewis Hamilton, really, and the incredible 91 wins that he achieved this weekend. Now, going sort of a bit more personal on this, I started watching Formula One around 2008, actually, and Hamilton really got me into the sport, you could say. The first race I ever saw was the championship winning race at Brazil.
Me too.
When he overtook Glock. Was that Luca? Was that
me as well?
Really? That's so weird. No, that it was, and I remember it vividly. I remember just being in my room, watching the TV and jumping up and down for some reason, seeing Lewis Hamilton cross the line to take the championship. It was just unbelievable at the time, just seeing this boy from Stevenage, take on the world and eventually win. And I never thought once that he would go on to match the record of Michael's, and maybe go on and beat it now. It's just an unbelievable achievement that I'm not quite sure a lot of people maybe have grasped yet. I'd almost compare it to, Nadal equaling Federer's record 20 Grand Slams, a couple of days ago, or Chris Hoy winning all of his gold medals at the Olympics. It's just a staggering sporting achievement. And that the fact that Lewis is now going to, without a shadow of doubt, be reckoned as one of the most successful, if not the most successful F1 driver of all time is completely staggering. And let's not remember, Lewis, went into his McLaren debut season against the likes of Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen and almost wiped the floor with them in his first time of trying. And since then, he's taken on the likes of Sebastian Vettel and Nico Rosberg, Bottas, and
don't you dare say Valtteri Bottas.
I knew Chris was going to say something. And Jenson Button, and he's taken them all on and won along the way. So I just think it's an absolutely unbelievable achievement. And seeing him on that top step with the Schumacher helmet, which maybe one of you might want to touch on, kind of was really, it was quite emotional, actually.
Did you get the tissues?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was almost there. I didn't quite, but I could feel myself almost getting to the point of crying, but I just about held it. Yeah, who wants to start with that? Luca, why don't we start with you?
Why, thank you. So, as ever, people have taken to try to, defend Schumacher's honor, and this is because how dare Hamilton be mentioned in the same breath as this legend? Hamilton does not deserve it. He's a crybaby. Blah blah blah. People are always trying to sort of discredit Hamilton. Say he's like, oh, lucky in that. Of course, he has had like the best car for the past, 5 of the last 7 years, maybe. But you still need to do the job. And the fact is that Hamilton he's had the tools to do it, and he's over-delivered on so many levels. The fact that he's probably the driver who is very much certain to probably be the only one, but definitely the first one to break 100 in both poles and wins. And so, like, he could probably do that as early as next year, because he's on 91 now and needs 9 more, and there's not 9 races left in the season. It is just incredible to think about, because I think everyone just assumed that Schumacher's records, because when he got to 91, the next closest was Alain Prost. He was 40 wins behind. And so you would never think in a million years that these records would be surpassable. And he's I think Hamilton this year, especially in the midst of everything that's going on, he's really taken his star power and done something with it, because I think many sports people are told to stay in their lane, and because they're overly privileged and all that. But he's really done something with the world and with his power. And I think because he's now just founded a racing team as well to compete in Extreme E, which is a sport that is a form of motorsport that's set on sustainability. And a lot of people assume that because Hamilton's preaching about environmental stuff means that he hates motorsport somehow. It's more the fact that he wants to try and make motorsport sustainable for the future. And I think that can only be a great thing. So I think Hamilton has definitely solidified his status as a legend. And I think the motorsport world should be grateful for him.
Yeah. Thanks, Luca. That was quite nicely put. James, did you have anything to add on to that?
It was incredible. Like, it didn't quite sink in what Hamilton had done for a bit after the race. I think until I saw Mick Schumacher giving Hamilton Michael's helmet and Hamilton kind of absorbing what had happened. I did a piece before the weekend, like a little kind of look back at the 2013 German Grand Prix, the last time we were at the Nürburgring. And I did a quick tot up of Hamilton's wins at that point, and he had, back then Hamilton had 1 championship and 21 race wins, and it made me think, he's had 70 wins since then. That's more than most drivers. What's more than any driver other than himself and Schumacher have had in their entire career.
Yeah,
he is undoubtedly one of the best drivers of all time, and I know that's always going to be up for debate, and people are going to say about different eras and you can't compare drivers, but he is undoubtedly one of the best drivers of all time, and I'm personally so excited to see him extend this record. And yeah, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea that he's winning so many races, but I think it's amazing that we get to see an athlete on top of his game like this, and we get to see it. We don't have to read about it on the internet 20, 30 years after the fact. We get to see the history of this sport being made at the moment.
Yeah. Chris, anything to add?
Yeah, you've got to put him in your sort of top bracket, top of the crop. I mean, to put it in aspect, sort of, it says he's number 44, and that was just 44 finish in a row. So it's a sport game. He drives it, and that it's Britain 18 to Eifel 20, and then 90 wins in a row, and then sort of to put it in aspect, and then joint second to the record is him again. Japan 16 to France 18. He's had 1 retirement since Japan 2016. So reliability's there, and he doesn't throw it in. Well, he may shoot Schumacher during his career. He was known for, to a degree, of sometimes having a paddy.
Well,
Bill
yeah. Nicely put, Chris.
Damon Hill.
I mean, I was watching one of the race,
and so we didn't have the radio back then. So
yeah,
to a degree. So, but then that's comparing eras, and then you could be there all day, like say Jackie Stewart, for example, when he won the Nordschleife by 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
there's certainly stuff you can't compare, but they're definitely one of, or is he the best? But then you'll have some people in the corner say no, he isn't, because he's got the best material, he's got the best car. Because Bottas, for example, he should be putting more of a fight up like Rosberg did.
I think we should put a disclaimer up that Chris is heavily anti-Bottas at this point. So anything he says is
I'm anti-Hamilton. I'm giving him credit.
And
I'm only saying.
See, what is your thought on Hamilton's overtake for the win? Do you think that Bottas gifted him it? Did Bottas slow down, lock up? Was that mistake caused by already failures with the MGU-H we didn't see, or was that a genuine overtake for the win that we saw?
Well, Bottas bottled it. Bottas wouldn't have done that, and then would have been like, oh yeah, damn it, my bad, come through Hamilton. No, Hamilton had to make the move stick anyway. but he was very heavily advantaged by the fact that Bottas had locked his tyre. I'm not sure about. I think it might, like the MGUH. I'm not entirely sure what that has to do with the braking system. Maybe is that like regeneration or something?
The MGUH is yeah, that's right. The MGUH is the recovery of the energy
then
through
I'm.
the brakes.
I think he was probably it was probably failing by that point then already.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know whether because you saw basically that Hamilton was closing in up until the point when he did lock his brakes up. So I didn't know whether that had something to do with why Hamilton was closing up, or that Hamilton is just brilliant, which is probably the latter.
A bit of both, I reckon.
You know.
Bottas tyres went, and I'm not anti Bottas. I'm just anti Mercedes, and I'm giving Hamilton credit. You got to give me credit for saying that.
Yeah, no, you do. It's you know, and but the fact that he was able to take that win at the Nürburgring, at the the German Grand Prix, in a way, the home of Mercedes, that could only be a positive in their eyes.
Equaling Schumacher only 55 miles away from where he was born.
Wow, that's I didn't actually know that. Where was Hamilton born again?
Not Hamilton, Schumacher.
Schumacher, sorry. Where was Schumacher?
He was born in Stevenage, mate. Wrong country.
Yeah.
Schumacher was born and raised in Kerpen, which is just to the west of Cologne.
Right. Oh, just incidentally where Hulkenberg was before.
Yeah, I think we should get onto him right now.
Yeah, we could actually. That's a good point.
Can I just raise one more stat, please?
Go for it.
Go on.
So just to compare, just to throw Bottas under the water a little bit more. In the last 3.5 seasons, he's only led 611 laps.
Wow. Do we have a
Verstappen's led 530.
Wow.
And Rosberg led 1,533. So, come on.
See,
and he's only won 9 races. Come on, Bottas, pick it up.
I do feel a little.
We're still waiting for this master plan that he said to beat F1 2020. Was that the game, or was that the actual season? Sorry.
It's all right. No, I do feel a little bit for Bottas in a way that going into this race, he had won the previous race, he'd taken pole position, and to an extent he was leading with, he was in with a shout of the win. And had he won this, he would have still easily been within a shout of the championship. He'd done quite well up to this point to change the momentum in his favor. And I think it's quite unfortunate that he had to retire from the race in such a way that really has given Hamilton a 69-point lead in the championship now. So
nice.
That's game, set, and match, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, stranger things can happen, but like Chris said, Hamilton's had next to no retirements in the last few years, so you can't really count on that happen. Yeah, he drives that car so smoothly, apparently, that it just doesn't break down.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there anything that Hamilton doesn't do right on track?
apart from parking at the end of a start at the end of the pit lane.
The only thing that's going to happen is back marker's going to hit him, or he's going to have a collision with Bottas, or probably maybe Verstappen.
Yes.
Well, Albon went a bit skitsy, didn't he? But
yeah.
Let's go. One thing at a time. I want to talk about Hulkenberg.
Yeah. All right. I think Luca really, really wants to talk about Hulkenberg. So let's
super sub out Hulkenberg. Let's go.
Yeah, he was once again drafted in at last minute by Racing Point due to the fact that Lance Stroll had come over with some illness that we're not entirely sure what it is, but I believe that after a few COVID tests that they all came back negative, so it wasn't COVID. But he'd been suffering with something since just after the Russian Grand Prix, and obviously he hadn't recovered to the point.
He drank some tea.
He drank some tea, and he had to obviously sit out for this weekend. And of course, none other than Nico Hulkenberg, probably sitting in some cafe somewhere having a croissant in Cologne, had to come. Well, no, tell a lie. He was already on his way to the Nürburgring doing some duties for RTL. So in actual fact, it worked out quite well that he was sort of around the general area.
And just happened to have his race helmet in the boot of his car.
Exactly. Yeah, it's almost as if he expected it to happen, you could say. But he came in last minute, and he didn't even get to take part in any free practice session, as we saw. due to the fact that obviously free practice 1, free practice 2 got rained off, and it was so last minute that he couldn't take part in FP3 and went straight into qualifying into Q1, which was such a tall order. And obviously he finished in at the bottom in last place, which is not more. He couldn't really do more than that. He had about 4 laps in order to get used to the car and to the track, which was incredibly difficult. But I think he only finished half a second off. I can't remember who finished just ahead of him. Was it Giovinazzi or Raikkonen or something? But
no, it was half a second off of Giovinazzi, who was like the last driver who could have been knocked out.
Yeah.
Like he was in 15th, so he made it through.
Yeah, which is not too bad. Which is not too bad. And then during the race, he made his way from last place all the way up to P8. Given there was some luck in that a few people dropped out and this and that, but he still held his own, and he overtook Sebastian Vettel in a Ferrari. This guy has
Not
just
too
been
difficult.
sitting on the sidelines playing FIFA for 4 months or something, and he's just come in at last
Top
minute
German.
and done an absolutely terrific job. And go on, let's talk a bit about Nico Hulkenberg then. Go on, Luca.
I run out of superlatives for him. He was in a rush at Silverstone to replace Perez. Didn't end up racing the first time round, and then ended up qualifying third in the second race, the second Silverstone race, replacing Perez. And then when Perez came back COVID negative for Spain, it was back to business as usual, sitting there twiddling his thumbs. And then to come along at the Nürburgring the way he did, with everyone having had only 1 hour's practice and he had none, and to be only half a second away from a Q2 appearance was already pretty great, considering it was his first time turning the wheel in anger at that particular venue. And then to finish 8th, it's incredible. I'm honestly about to say it, but I think losing an F1 drive at the end of last year was probably a blessing in disguise, because it's only just made his performances more prolific. He has done incredibly, and I don't know who would end up taking him next year. Haas should have signed him instead of having Grosjean, but they wanted to have some kind of continuity before the 2021 regulations came in. Now it's 2022, so that's kind of not the case anymore. Maybe Alpha, if Raikkonen decides to retire, although Perez is probably a bit higher on that list there. He needs to be somewhere. We can't just let talent like Hulkenberg go to waste. And I'm just so happy that he performed the way he did. I wasn't expecting him to get into the points after Saturday, but he did. And also a little interesting anecdote. For Silverstone, the first Silverstone race, he obviously had a plain black helmet, just plain carbon with a few sponsor decals put on. Traditionally, BWT, the Austrian water company that sponsor Racing Point, they ask for all the drivers of Racing Point to always have pink helmets. And the fact that Hulkenberg, he brought along a yellow helmet, that must have irked them a little bit, wouldn't it? He did have that pink helmet ready by the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, but then they're like, oh screw it, we can't satisfy the Austrian water company. You just have to go out with a yellow helmet. Not the worst thing in the world.
It was his Renault one.
Yeah, well, it was Renault, and then he had the plastered over sponsors or something.
Post-it notes.
Right on the front, bit of black tape to cover. I assume it was Renault. I don't know why he had that in the first place. Maybe they were asking him for some kind of ornaments were RTL. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, phenomenal drive by Hulkenberg.
Yeah. Chris, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, top German, and to put more top German, he's outscored
There's only
Vettel.
2.
Well, he's outscored Vettel in the last 7 races. And he's only been involved in 2 of them. 10 points to 8. And here's a curveball for you. I think Albon done an inconclusive test for COVID, and a certain Marco was on the phone as well. Super sub indeed. Odds of Hulk to Red Bull next year.
That's an interesting shout. I didn't actually know that he was about to super sub Albon if the positive test came back. Is that right?
Because Sonoda weren't about, and their other standbys weren't about.
Set camera.
I think Sete Camera's in Japan and Buemi just wasn't around.
Yeah, so the only super sub that's about.
It's almost strange, isn't it, that we're still sort of in a point where official reserve drivers and test drivers aren't really being used. I kind of want to just touch on the fact that Stoffel Van Dorn is officially supposed to be Racing Point's reserve driver, and he was there that weekend ready and waiting for anything to happen, and he once again did not get the opportunity to drive, and he
didn't have a seat fitting
of him playing COD in his little motorhome, going, right, well, that's me for the weekend. Like, kind of feel bad for him in a way, but it raises the question as to why teams don't have these reserve and test drivers on site, especially in this time of uncertainty and COVID. Do you think it'd be more important to bring your reserve driver to the test track? Although, if it's all well and fine having Hulkenberg on standby at any given moment, but I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy seeing Hulkenberg drive. I feel a bit sorry for Van Dorn that he didn't get an opportunity at the time. James, do you have anything to add on any of that?
I agree with you. When the season started, I expected to see a flurry of kind of recent XF1 drivers being signed to reserve roles, like we had Van Dorn and Gutierrez at Mercedes. I expected someone like De Resta to come back in the frame, but there's been nothing. And I found it really surprising when Racing Point needed Hulkenberg the first time. There was the talk of it being Gutierrez coming in, and then obviously he didn't have a super license because he hadn't done
it literally expired days before, didn't it?
Yeah, and they need to do like the minimum 300 kilometers of running in a car, and Mercedes said, well, we're just not going to bother giving him that. What? He's your reserve driver. What happens if Bottas or Hamilton can't take a race? They're just like, well, we didn't bother doing the paperwork for our reserve driver.
Then they just call up Hulkenberg, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what happens if two drivers in the paddock are ill, because teams can't share Nico Hulkenberg. He seems to be the official F1 reserve driver, though.
No. Here's what they do. Here's what they do. One team has Nico Hulkenberg. The other team has Nico Bruce Bannerberg.
Yeah.
Maybe he just races in one car and they like split the livery down the side like the BAR, and then they just share the constructors' points.
Or they could do a Formula E. They could just like drive. He could drive half of one car for half the race, and he parks it back in the garage, hops in the second car, and then drives the other half of the race with that. Maybe.
But it is really odd that they've got Red Bull, we just touched on. They have Sete Camera and Sebastian Buemi, who are both extremely good drivers, and neither of them were there at the weekend. And Stoffel Van Dorn is shared between Mercedes, Racing Point, McLaren. I think there's another team, but I can't remember who. And yet he's not their first choice, despite the fact he's on circuit. He's already done a COVID test. He's got the contracts in place and everything. And yet they still phone someone in from outside who then has to miss practice because of it. It's bizarre. It's an odd situation.
Think of the distracted boyfriend meme, and it's just on my WhatsApp now. It's like a guy like that. I know people can't see it. But then like Stoffel with a really like pissed off face, and Hulkenberg like, yeah.
It's so true. Yeah, but kudos to Nico Hulkenberg. Fantastic performance. Can't praise it enough. But another good performance this weekend, Daniel Ricciardo getting his first podium for Renault, and spurring on all the tattoo memes on social media, because obviously Cyril Abiteboul made an agreement with Daniel Ricciardo of a few bottles of beer, saying that once they got their first podium, that he will get a tattoo, and it will happen. So keep up to date with social media, and we'll see what happens with that. But once again, Daniel Ricciardo has been putting in some amazing performances as of recently. And I think really, I only really started to notice it sort of around Silverstone when he was battling with Sainz just before Sainz's tyre blew out. And he took P4 on that day. I think he took P4 on that day. And
yes,
since then, there have been bits and bobs of amazing performances, like at Mugello, for example, and this. Which he's just had a fantastic season, and he made the one stop work. Was it the one stop that he did? Was it
I think he made another stop under the safety car.
Yeah, he did.
Was it that he was on the hard tires and that he was trying to make what was Daniel Ricciardo's strategy?
He hit it very early, much earlier than everyone else. I think he had like, if there'd been no safety car at the end, he would have had to have done 44 laps out like on one compound of tires, and Perez was on the same compound and catching up to him very quickly, and the safety car saved him.
Yeah.
I think Renault were looking at a one stop, but yeah, like Luca said, the safety car really saved them at the end.
Yeah, because he
pit underneath the VSC, but it ended as soon as he went in the pit, so he didn't really benefit from the VSC.
That's right. Yeah, but I think it's just a fantastic achievement for both him and Renault, who seem to be on the rise at the moment. You know, it might be a bit of a slap in the face that he's now going to McLaren, who Renault seem to be outperforming most weekends as of recently. Although given the fact that the midfield is incredibly tight and you can't really read into that, it's maybe not too much of an issue. But certainly Renault seem to have got their act together. And I think there was a report saying that the wind tunnel, there'd been progress being made there in terms of the aerodynamic, in terms of the diffuser area of the car, that made some gains. And you have to sort of think that, especially with McLaren having to take a new engine next year, which would kind of compromise their design for 2021. They're going to have to fit around a new engine around the bodywork and a new chassis. And they're obviously struggling with the direction of the front end of the car. We saw that they were playing with different bits and bobs, and which Carlos had on his car, and he was really struggling this weekend, as Lando was in qualifying last time out when he had the updates on the car. So McLaren seem to be struggling at the moment, and it's Renault that are picking up the pieces. And with Racing Point, who had a really good start of the season, don't seem to have quite the longevity in development as Renault do. I think Renault are kind of really poised at the moment to maybe nip that P3 in the Constructors' Championship and maybe go on to do quite well next season. So yeah, what do we all think about that?
Shall I go first?
Yes.
I seem to be going first all the time. I'm sorry about that, guys.
You just get in there first. You're too quick.
Yeah. I don't. A lot of people will obviously think that Ricciardo might have played himself by signing for McLaren, but I genuinely believe that it will come good for Ricciardo. I think he's I think he has made a good move going to McLaren, even if at the moment Renault look like the better option. I will say though, did anyone see after the race he was being interviewed by Lawrence Barretto on F1 TV, and Lawrence was like, "Why didn't you do a shoey?" And he was like,
"Oh yeah,
no." He actually made it onto Reddit on r/watch people die inside. Like Ricciardo had, like he'd forgotten his age-old tradition, which to be fair, he hadn't been on the podium since May 2018 when he won at Monaco, which is bizarre to think about, honestly.
You nicked my stat. But yeah.
He in any case, I'm delighted for Ricciardo, mainly because I think we all want to see what tattoos. He said it's something to do with him, but with a German spin on it. So I reckon it'll be a honey badger with a lederhosen.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Nice. Chris, what tattoo suggestion would you give Cyril if you could?
Sort of something similar, probably just like pretty something small. If you hear Horner to Verstappen, he was being a bit cheeky, saying, "Oh, by the way, Cyril's going to get that tattoo," and they were having a little joke over the radio. So you can see across the paddock, it's like a little running theme. Ricciardo did do the shoe in the end. He done it on his Instagram, down the hatches. But yeah, I think the move will come good because it's not a bad move. It's Mercedes after all. So they'll lose maybe in design, they'll gain on the straights. And then you got a bit of friendship with him, because him and Norris get on like a wildfire. So it'd be hard to, hopefully when COVID decides to go and they'll have a bit more interaction. I mean, that they still like when they do the interviews and stuff like that, sort of every now and then you see them like poking and prodding each other, like pulling down the hoods and stuff. It's just going to be who's going to contain the two of them. So hope instead of having the rivalry of two people that can't stand each other. It'll be who can control them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a proper friendly team, but I just hope it doesn't turn into something sour.
No,
Me too.
absolutely. Yeah, I just kind of want to touch on that. I thought Perez did such a good job this weekend, and I was kind of rooting for him in a way to kind of pit Ricardo. I know that there's a load of Ricardo fans out there more so than there are Perez fans, but given the fact that he doesn't even have a race seat for next year, it just kind of made sense to me that if he would have got that podium,
Oh, there's a shout.
that middle finger to Racing Point as he's leaving the door. And I think his last podium was 2018 as well. So both Ricardo and Perez were vying for that podium for the same length of time in a way. But I think had the safety car not happened, he would have been on for it. To be honest, he was on the faster. Well, he had the more fresher tires, shall we say, and he was really catching him at a rate of knots. So it's quite a shame that we were sort of robbed of the opportunity to see both of them have that fight. But of course, Ricardo did well to hold him off on similar compounds. So well done to Ricardo. And I think we're going to move on to Albon now. And Albon under pressure, I've got here on my notes. And, I know James wants to say something here. So actually, I'm just going to skip my synopsis and just go straight to James, who probably has a lot to say on this. Go on. What did you?
I know. I was hoping to bounce off what you were saying. It was a frustrating race to watch from Albon's perspective. I've never been like a huge kind of Albon fan. I've defended him a lot when people have been talking about him about to lose his seat and needing to improve, but not out of kind of always being an Albon fan, just because I think he's a really good driver and that his performances have largely been misread. But this race was not a good one. He seemed to have it in for the AlphaTauris for a lot of it. The collision with Kvyat and the near miss with Gasly.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he had the big lockup on lap one.
Get in my seat. Sorry.
He had that big lockup on lap one at turn 3 that Red Bull said he flat spotted his tyres all the way through to the carcass, and they had to pit for safety reasons because it was just shaking the car apart. So that put him way down at the back of the field, going through traffic, and his race just kind of fell apart from there until he then picked up the damage to his radiator and had to retire. And yeah, he's just having a very up and down season. He had like the podium at Mugello that was brilliant and timely, and we all thought, okay, Albon saved his seat then. And then a few races later, he has a race like this, and suddenly he's under pressure again, and he just can't seem to hook a race weekend together and then 2 race weekends together. And it's such a shame to watch because he is a good driver, but he's in that. I think he's just in a similar position to Bottas, where he's in almost an impossible situation where he's got to, maybe more an impossible situation than Bottas. He's expected to match Verstappen, but not match him too closely that he beat him, but match him closely enough that he pushes Verstappen along and encourages him, but still stays behind him. And he's not there, and he can't seem to hook up enough of a lap, like throughout qualifying, throughout the race to get there. When you add on to the fact that the Red Bull is very much designed to Verstappen's kind of driving style, and that Verstappen is probably outperforming the car as much as Albon is underperforming in the car. Yeah. I was gutted seeing every time the camera kind of cut back to Albon and he was making another mistake, and just thinking, please just settle down a little bit, like whatever's going on here. And I think he always seems to make these kind of problems where he has a bad qualifying, and granted he qualified 5th this weekend, which is really good, but he was pipped by Leclerc, dropped back a little bit on the opening lap, made that mistake, and he seems to try and kind of catch up and almost overdrives it and overthinks it, and things just start going wrong. And it's these little mistakes that just build and build and build until the weekend just falls apart for him.
Yeah, Luca?
Yeah, that move that he put on Kvyat in the braking zone, like that is just racecraft 101. You do not deviate to go into like the braking zone if you're not 100% sure you've cleared the car who you've overtaken. And that was just very clumsy from Albon, and he definitely deserved the penalty.
Can I
Go on.
just say, that's the move that I do on F1 2020 when I'm not winning and I slow a car, and I just chop across the front of the overtaking car, and it'll just send it into a spin. That's always what
When
I
you
do.
got damage turned off.
Yeah, and when I saw that, I was like, that's an F1 2020 move. What are you doing? It was bizarre. Sorry, Luca, go on.
That's fine. It's fine. You make a good point. About that is just that you expect it of a shaggy looking long haired noob. Sorry, I don't mean that.
Excuse me.
No. You expect that of someone who is seriously, but that is just the most basic thing you don't do in racing. You don't move across until you're 100%. You stay, if anything, on your line. If you can't clear the guy long before the entry to the corner, you just don't. So Albon completely deserved that penalty, and I hate to be too harsh on him, but one thing I have noticed is that whenever James is harsh on him, he seems to perform brilliantly for the following race. So, James, I need you to just go on Twitter and say that Albon's doing terribly, and he's going to lose his Red Bull seat, because then he'll win races. Okay?
Yeah, if I write another hot take about how he's about to lose his seat, he'll probably win in Portimao.
Yeah, he probably will.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
All right.
He tries too hard.
Sorry. Yeah, go on, Chris.
Say just tries too hard. He over tries, and then if he doesn't, if he pushes the car, Verstappen will find the extra tenth to split the Mercedes. But that's the difference. If he, then it'll be that extra 2-3 tenths close to Verstappen. Go, hang on, and then Verstappen will look at that data, go, Albon's found an extra tenth here. I'll push the car there, because that's what Verstappen was looking at in his data in qualifying. And then he was only half a tenth, because Red Bull bought the upgrades this weekend, the new wings and the hollow front wing, very new update, and they seem to be a lot closer here. And I think if it's Mugello and Imola seem to be the next two, not Mugello, sorry, Portimao and Imola, they're the next two places. I think otherwise it's going to be a domination for the next whole season.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, all right, so we're just going to move on, and I am aware that we're starting to run out of time, and we've got a couple more points. So I'm just going to kind of touch on these really quickly. The other talking points were that, Norris unfortunately had to retire with a PU issue 3/4 of the way through the race, which was unfortunate given the fact that he had to take a new engine coming into this weekend. So who knows what that was, but maybe Norris is going to have some penalties in the future, which is a shame.
The 250 place grid penalty that they seem to.
It's broken.
He drove incredibly well.
Bring the meme.
So it was a shame to see him drop out. And of course, there was Grosjean, who got into the points P8 with a broken finger.
P9.
P9. Sorry, thank you, Luca. And he was complaining on the radio for a bit, didn't he? That was it Kimi went onto the gravel, and a piece of the gravel had.
Do you buy that? His broken finger.
Yeah, and gosh, I mean that must have been absolutely horrible to race with, and the fact that he had the endurance to last a whole race distance with that and still get into the points is remarkable. So
this is why we need the aero screen.
He got his two pints at the end as well for celebrating. If he'd done that in Lotus when he got last podium, he'd have been
pints.
Exactly 15 pints. He'd have been absolutely sozzled.
Yeah, he's that was his first points, isn't it? And it puts him above Magnussen in the standings. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays with who, if any, keep the Haas seat next year. So that's going to be very important for him. He drove a brilliant race, to be honest. So well done to Roman. And
Giovinazzi did as well.
And Giovinazzi did as well. Yeah, did he? He finished P10, didn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe those Ferrari boys looming.
Yes.
He finished ahead of Vettel. That's going to hurt.
Yes, he did not have a good race, did he? Good old Vettel. Unfortunate, really, given that Leclerc once again sort of outperformed that car, putting it where he did in P4 and finished in P7.
Seven.
7. Thanks, Luca. And once again, Vettel seemed to be miles off the pace and uncomfortable with the balance of the car. And it remains to be seen as to whether he will pick it up. It seems unlikely at this point. So not looking good for him. But I think I just want to touch on one last thing before we sort of start wrapping it up. And that was Kimi Räikkönen. And that was that he achieved the record of the most amount of Grand Prix starts for any F1 driver. Cue klaxon sound, if editor has that, on 327 starts, which is absolutely incredible. Although it was quite funny to see how on some of the features on Sky F1, they kept trying to tell him, they kept trying to say, what do you think of it? What do you think of it? And he was like, I don't care. He was like,
what else is new with Kimi?
Care of it, which, that's Kimi, isn't it? That's Kimi all over. But
what was that thing he said? It was like, well, most records are meant to be broken in most sports.
Yeah.
Kimi would have actually, because if people forget that he actually missed 2010 and 2011, imagine if he'd like been in those 2 years, he would have been on like what 340 something starts now. That would be incredible.
Wow.
Like, but yeah, Kimi doesn't care. Kimi wouldn't care if a Finnish Grand Prix happened. Kimi just is Kimi, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you very much, guys. And
driver of the day.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Oh, just because you want Hulkenberg again mentioned.
Hey, you don't know. You don't know.
Well, I'm giving it to Hulkenberg. So if you don't give it to Hulkenberg, you're blind.
Okay. Go on, Adam. You first. Who would you give driver of the day to?
Oh, driver of the day. Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna give it to. We haven't actually spoken about him this race, but I'm gonna give it to Gasly. He, once again outside of the top 10, and he made that sort of going onto the harder compound sort of strategy work for him again, which he sort of has tended to do throughout a lot of the races recently. And he was right on the back of Carlos Sainz in the last few laps. I remember seeing the lap counter get to just within a second come the checkered flag. And he just seems to be driving the absolute, the wheels off that AlphaTauri. So there's a lot of contenders for driver of the day. It's I know a lot of you are probably going to pick some other worthy people, but I'm just going to give it to Gasly. Actually, I thought he did an absolutely magnificent job. Who wants to go next? Luca, go for it. Oh no, someone else.
I think we might have lost Luca.
Oh, okay.
Hello,
Luca.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
we
got you back again. Yeah.
What happened there? Okay, never mind. We can talk about it after. I'm gonna go for. I know I love the fact that Hulkenberg came back and did what he did, and Chris is right. I'm not gonna give it to anyone else. I mean, I like to think normally be original, but Chris beat me to it. Screw you. Yeah, Hulkenberg. You've heard me wax lyrical about him. He's done incredible with this race. Giving it to him.
Okay, fantastic. James, who was your driver of the day?
I know I'm biased being a Ricciardo fan, but his performance, like getting up into that podium position and then holding off Perez, even if he was helped by the safety car, he just drove brilliantly all day. So Daniel Ricciardo. If Norris had finished the race, I might have given it to him because he also drove spectacularly. And I think he's probably the honourable mention.
Yeah.
The fact that he managed to keep going for so long, pressing Control-Alt-Delete after every corner. It's quite impressive.
Remember when driver of the day first started happening and they all kept giving it to like Verstappen, and even when he retired, Verstappen parked that car like a champion.
I remember when it started, the first couple of races, it was a landslide to Rio Haryanto every time.
What?
Yeah.
It's like the entire population of Indonesia was voting for Haryanto.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Doesn't he own some sort of like stationery business now? I've heard.
Wow.
I've got a feeling that's what he does. He's in the stationery business.
Can I just say, Rio Haryanto, when he raced in GP3 in 2010, when I went there at the time, I was, the song Alejandro by Lady Gaga. Haryanto, Rio Haryanto, Rio Haryanto. I don't know why I did that.
I just had an idea for a feature article on F1 drivers with weird post F1 careers, like Jody Scheckter and his dairy farm.
Charles Peake is now a manager at some kind of like transportation firm, I think.
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah,
And of course, there's Robert Dornbos with his business, which you can look up because I'm not mentioning it on air.
Okay. You'll have to tell me about that. Chris, last but not least, driver of the day.
Nicholas Latifi.
What, for being the person with the most FP1 spins?
Well, I don't know. Vettel came close, wasn't it? I'll probably have to. It'd be Hulkenberg, but yeah, fair shout for Gasly. But yeah, Hulkenberg for just getting the sign up, job done. Park his Porsche up, very nice car, and solid points.
Yeah, fantastic, guys. So in 2 weeks' time, Formula One goes to Portimao, another racetrack.
Robert Dornbos makes sex toys.
Freaking hell, Luca. Goodness sake.
Sorry, carry on.
We need to finish the episode. Come on. So we go to Portimao, and moving swiftly on. We've never been there. Just quickly before we finish, who do we think? Who do we have for the win, and who do we think?
Hamilton, of course.
Best of the rest is what I'm just going to quickly ask.
Norris best of the rest.
Interesting. Norris best of the rest. James.
Perez.
Chris.
The best of the rest.
I'm gonna go. It's gonna rain. No, I'm joking. It's gonna be dry, bone dry, and you're gonna have the usual three on the podium in Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, and best of the rest is gonna be Hulkenberg.
Subbing for whoever.
He's gonna somehow find a way in, isn't he? It's just inevitable. It's the anyway.
Stroll's gonna slap the shits. That's what.
Let's let's close this episode now. Thanks, guys. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for listening. Do all of you want to just quickly say to the listeners, give your Twitter handles or where they can reach you? So, Luca, where can the fans reach you?
That it can be reached me by aeroplane, boat, car. I'm very literal. You can find me on Twitter at RedLuca56, where I post very funny jokes. That's debatable.
Nice. And James?
I'm on Twitter at James16Matthews.
Okay, and Chris?
And you can catch me at C_Lordy91.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys, and thank you.
Do you want to mention your social media?
Oh, thank you. I almost forgot. It's exactly
like the Indy 500 episode.
It's like the Indy 500 episode all over again. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at Wheeler_deals. Play on the Wheeler dealer sort of thing going on there. Anyway, thank you all for joining us here for the next installment for the Pitcast, and of course, keep up to date on all of our social media for regular posts on the Pit Crew online, for regular features throughout the week, and we will see you all out on track.